Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We're in the kitchen again today, and today I am going to make griddle buns. I'm showing you how to make these today because somebody asked, because in one of my videos where everyone was just hanging out around the fire and eating hamburgers, someone asked me what kind of bun I was using because they were kind of flat and they seemed to pull apart really easily. You didn't need to cut them with a knife or anything, and I was using griddle buns. So griddle buns are really easy to make. You can make them with any bread dough you have, okay? My grandma used to make these all the time. They're really easy. Any bread dough. I'm using a standard white bread dough, but if you prefer a whole wheat or a rye, you can certainly do that as well. So I am going to make 7 buns. You can make any number of buns you like. You can make them larger, you can make them smaller. This recipe works either way. You can use a mold, you can just put them on a pan. It doesn't matter. You can just leave them on your silicone mat if you like. It doesn't matter. So I am going to make 7 buns, and the recipe I'm using is 3 cups of flour to 1 cup of water. That'll make me about 7 hamburger sized buns. If you want a different number of buns, or if you want larger buns, just make them larger, make them smaller, make a double batch of dough, whatever you like. So, griddle buns. The first thing we're going to do is take our dough and we're going to divide it into 7 equal pieces. And yeah, I'm using a fairly sticky dough because I like a stickier dough for griddle buns. So we're just going to rip off a few pieces and then we'll kind of redistribute them so that we have an equal amount, because that's way too big. But it doesn't matter. We're just doing 7 sections of dough, and that one's way too small. But that's fine. We're just ripping them into 7 sections of dough right now, just so I have 7. There we go. These 2 are about the right size. So this one is too big, so he's going to lose a little bit to go there. This guy is going to lose a little bit to go there, and a little bit to go on that one. But otherwise, we're good. So you don't have to form these into balls or anything. It doesn't matter. So what we're going to do now, and you do the same thing for each one. Take 1 batch of dough, one of your portions, divide it in 2, okay? Take one of them, flatten it. Now you can either flatten it on your mat or you can flatten it in a mold. I'm going to flatten mine in a mold just because it makes my life a little easier. So flatten it in a mold or flatten it on your mat. Doesn't matter, does not matter. And then what we need is some butter, okay? We need a little bit of butter because the whole point of these griddle buns is when you're going to make them into a hamburger, you just pull them apart and they pop apart. So in order to do that, we need a little bit of butter. Not much, just about a 1/4 teaspoon. So you don't need much butter, okay? Just a little bit of butter. And then you take your other half of the dough, stretch it out, put it over top, push down on those edges, okay? So that those edges seal. That's why I like a stickier dough. And then push down on the entire bun. Don't push hard enough that the butter squishes out, but push it so it looks like a circular bun, okay? That's what you're gonna do. So we're gonna keep doing that with each of these, and we're just going to go around the pan and we're going to do 7 buns because that's the number I'm making. And I always use spoons to get the amount of butter I want. So you just use a little dollop of butter on each one. And I just use spoons because it's easier. It makes my life easier. And again, put that on top. There we go. Push it down. There. Beautiful. And I'm just going to keep going. And what I'm going to do is speed up the video so you can watch me do it. But you'll watch me do it very, very quickly because you don't need to sit here and listen to me talk while I form buns. So we're going to hit the time-lapse button now. There we go. Griddle buns are formed. So what we're going to do is we're going to set these aside only for about 10 minutes. They really don't need more than that. We're not going to let them do a complete second rise. They already did their first rise when we made the dough, which obviously I didn't do in this video. I was using a dough that I had made before the video started. So let your dough rise once, then form your griddle buns. Now you're going to set them aside and kind of ignore them for about 10 minutes. In those 10 minutes, you can get your griddle set up. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my griddle set up, and then we will come back and we will cook these. It's really very easy, though it does take a little bit. That's okay. We're not in a super rush. So we are going to come back once my griddle is set up, and these have been resting for about 10 minutes. All right, we are back. Our griddle is set up and it's preheated. So I am going to add a little bit of butter to my griddle. You can use margarine if you like. What you shouldn't do is use margarine on the inside of your buns. That should be butter. But if you'd rather use margarine here, you can. I would rather use butter, but you can use either or. It won't make too much of a difference. They'll be a little less buttery if you use margarine. But you can use whatever you like. So my griddle is preheated. I'm now going to start pulling these guys out. Okay, they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be a perfect circle. It doesn't matter. And I'm going to start putting them down. 2. And these are going to have to cook quite a bit. And my griddle temperature is only about 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's because we actually don't want these guys to cook that fast. If they cook too fast on the outside, what'll happen is they're not cooked on the inside. So these guys are going to need 10 minutes at least per side on the griddle. And for me, it takes a lot longer than that. I like to turn my temp down and just let them cook. So there's my 7. We are going to time lapse through most of this cooking because you don't really need to see the entirety of the cooking process. You really just don't. I mean, you'll see it, but I'm going to be flipping these and rotating them. So because my griddle is warmer over here than it is over here, just because of where the plug is. So it's an electric griddle. So because it's warmer on this end than it is on this end, you're going to notice that I actually rotate them. So this guy, when he gets flipped, is going to end up over here, just so everyone ends up equally exposed to the heat. Because my griddle is a little uneven. Hopefully you have one that's not uneven. It's okay to have an uneven one. It happens. So what we're going to do is, they do need about 10 minutes per side, and you'll kind of be able to tell when you look at the sides of them how far up the cooking has happened. But you don't want to burn them. So it's okay to turn your temp down and let them cook for longer if you need to. So I'm going to time lapse this so you can kind of see what I'm doing, but know that it's going to take about 20 minutes on the griddle for them to cook. So we're just going to start time lapsing. We'll stop time lapsing when they're pretty much ready to come off the grill. So here goes the time lapse. All right, so these are almost done. You can see when they get kind of that dark and they kind of start to collapse in on themselves. So these ones over here aren't quite cooked yet. Obviously, I just flipped them a few minutes ago, but these ones are not cooked yet. So as they cook, I pull them off from my hot side because, like I said, my griddle heats unevenly. If yours heats evenly, you won't have that issue. But I am going to start pulling them off. These two at the end are ready, okay? They were the first ones I flipped, and they are ready to be pulled off. And I'm not going to make you watch me pull them off because it's going to be really boring. But they've been on actually for about half an hour, 20 to 30 minutes, and then they finally start to cook. How do you tell if they're cooked? Well, 1, they'll be nicely browned. 2, when you squeeze the sides, they kind of start puffing back at you. So instead of, if it's just bread dough, you would end up with just kind of a, an indent. But these indents, they kind of fill out a little bit differently. You can tell. So as you're cooking them, just kind of check. Like if I check over here, this one I can tell is not cooked yet. But these ones over here, I can tell they're springing back a little bit better, like they're actually cooked instead of having like a collapsible bread dough. But also they start to collapse and get a little bit thinner. So this one will collapse more when it's fully cooked. These ones are cooked over here. So I'm going to start pulling them off, and we will come back in, for you, just a minute. For me, it's going to be about 10 minutes of letting them finish cooking and pulling them off. But 20 to 30 minutes, then start monitoring, see if they're done. But we'll come right back, and we won't have the griddle anymore, and I'll show you the finished product. And there we have it. They are finished. I'm just going to flip these ones over so you can see that side. But they are cooked inside, except they are still warm, and you want to let these cool because if they're still warm inside, they're still cooking inside. So this is a batch. This is a batch that I made the other day, and I will just show you what they look like inside when they're cool. So you just rip them open because they come apart really well. And you can see where that well of butter was. You can see that the butter was sitting right in here, and you can see that they are fully cooked inside. You just have to let them cool completely. So we're just going to set that one aside. That's what they look like when they're cooked. You can use them as hamburger buns. You can toast them up and put some butter or some jam on them. You can have them any way you like, but they're really easy. Total time is about an hour after you've made the bread dough, but a lot of that is just putting them on the griddle and walking away, so they're not even really that much of an effort. They do take about an hour though. So do expect that you're going to take an hour to make them, because if you get up in the morning and you want to make them quickly, that's not going to happen. They do take an hour. But that is about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. I hope you enjoyed making griddle buns with us. We'll see you tomorrow.